what am I spending my time doing? What do I want to be doing? How do I want to be feeling? Where should I be putting my time and my energy and my resources? And I think people I think they get lost in that. So, Sarah, something that we talk about all the time with patients, clients, people on the street, our family, basically everyone, is this idea of having a sense of what your core values are in your life.
Absolutely.
And just thinking a little bit about why that's so important and why do people feel so disconnected from that? What are you noticing with that?
I mean, I feel like our patients come in and feel like they're lost and feel like they don't have a sense of how to make decisions and feel like things are really hectic for them and hard, and people use the word stuck all the time, right?
Yes,
People
all the time.
just feel so off and they're almost in a panic about their lives. And it can be a subtle panic even, right? It doesn't have to be that something huge is going on, but people are like, I just don't feel right. I just feel off. I feel like I've lost the plot a little bit. And I always say the word to them, do you feel stuck? And they're like, that's it. I feel stuck.
Yeah, I feel stuck.
And so I feel like years ago, I came up with this idea of putting some more definition around who you are and what really matters to you. I feel like people have gotten lost in terms of what is meaningful to them, who they are, and what their core values are can really help somebody find direction.
Yeah, and so when you say values, to me, values are the things that are just ultimately the top priorities, the most important things. And how do you describe that to patients? Because that's kind of how I would think of it.
Yeah, and people, their eyes get really big when I say, okay, I'm going to write down on a piece of paper, I'm going to write down core values, and then I'm going to have you go home and list what your values are. They're like, what are you talking about?
What are values?
Yeah, what are
and
values?
what are mine?
Yeah. And so I always give the example of health being probably my strongest core value.
Yes.
And it's something that really matters to me, and everything that I do in my life reflects that value, right? For somebody else, it might be, education, and that they're passionate about, social justice and making change and educating the world in a different way.
Yes.
And so you can really get at your core values by honing in on what your actions are.
Thinking about what you spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah, what your behaviors are, what you spend time doing, and then reflect on like, oh, that is something that's really important to me, and kind of group that as a value. And think about who you are and what matters to you as a person, right?
Yeah, I think that when people are coming in and they're talking about feeling stuck or feeling overwhelmed or feeling lost, I always think about why that is. And we've talked about this before, this idea of just everything is so visible out in the world, like with social media and, Instagram and YouTube, and you have access to people all over the world doing all kinds of things all the time. It's just bombardment of information to your brain.
Yes.
And it makes me think, gosh, people must just be in comparison mode all the time and feeling like, I'm not doing enough and I don't have enough, and there's a lack of things in my life because these people are doing these things.
And should I be doing that?
And should I be
And why are they
like
doing that? I was just talking yesterday with the production team about this. Everybody's looking at what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And it's really confusing, and who cares?
Well, and how easy is it to get lost in that, where you're feeling like, okay, there's so many options, and there's so much information coming at me, and there's so much noise telling me, what I should have and what I should be doing and all these shoulds. And really, like, everything is external at that point, and you don't have a lot of energy or you don't have a lot of wherewithal to be able to look within and say, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Take a beat. What am I spending my time doing? What do I want to be doing? How do I want to be feeling? Where should I be putting my time and my energy and my resources? And I think people I think they get lost in that.
Absolutely. So this is a way of creating more definition.
Yeah.
And intention.
Yeah.
And looking on the inside, and that person that is unstable and living in lack and feels wobbly on the inside, like they don't have a solid foundation.
Yeah, I love that that term wobbly.
I know you always say that because that is how people feel.
Well,
and
it's kind of how you would look, right? It's like a good.
If you
it
looked
makes
on
me,
the
like,
inside,
visualize what people are feeling.
I say people look fine on the outside, but
Yeah.
they've got so much going on the inside. And clinically, that's what we see with our patients, right?
Yeah.
They come to us and they are seemingly fine, but then we talk to them and we unearth all these things, and they're just not, people are not okay, and they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a technique that really gives people something to dig into and define and, have deliberate intention in who they are as a person. And I think it can be really helpful to build that solid foundation.
Yes, and then also thinking about us as acupuncturists and how we, ultimately what we're doing most of the day is we're treating physical health symptoms,
Yeah.
but people come in and they're talking to us about their mental, emotional health because, for us, that's sort of an inseparable thing. They're so interconnected.
Absolutely.
And the physical and the mental and the emotional health are so interdependent. As Chinese medical practitioners, for us, that makes a lot of sense, but for so many people, they're like, well, I have this physical pain and I'm having these symptoms and I might be dealing with this autoimmune disease. And we're asking them all these questions about their childhood and their past history and traumas and injuries. And they're like, well, no, let's focus on my pain. And we're like, we are.
Yeah. I mean, just on Friday, this poor girl, she comes in for autoimmune, and she had numbness in her hands, but then she also her other chief complaint was shoulder pain, right?
Yeah.
She's just here for her shoulder and her Raynaud's.
Yeah.
Next thing we know, we're talking about when she was a teenager and all the things that happened to her,
Yeah.
and what happened with her family. And I always say to people, oh my gosh, you thought that you were just going to come here and talk about your shoulder. I'm so sorry. It always becomes so much more than that.
You're like, this is probably a lot.
It is so much. But, most people, we end up, being very emotive in a session with us because we ask questions that nobody else asks.
Yeah.
And we really dig into what's going on with them emotionally and physically. The two are not mutually exclusive. And it's so important to tap into that emotional piece as well, because it's a big part of how our physical health manifests.
Yeah, and when you are connected to your values, your core values,
Yeah.
or, the things that, matter most to you, you know where to put your energy.
Yeah.
You know where to devote your time.
Yep.
And in this world now, you can go a million different directions. And people really feel like they should be.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're supposed to be really busy, and we're supposed to be really productive, and we're supposed to be all of these things. But ultimately, what people tell us is, I don't know what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to put my energy. And so we see a lot of burnout, we see a lot of fatigue, and just high levels of stress where people are in fight or flight mode all the time, and living with these survival emotions.
Yeah.
And that really drastically impacts our physical health, which makes a lot of sense why people are coming in to see us, because they're not feeling well.
Yeah.
But when you're in fight or flight all the time and you're living with stress hormones and stress chemicals all the time, that has an impact on our immune system.
It does.
It impacts our ability to recover. It impacts our stress, our digestion. I mean, everything is impacted just by being so stressed out all the time.
Yep.
And a lot of that stress is connected to the fact that people are not tapped into what feels great to them,
Yeah.
what feels important, those values.
Yep. So defining core values is a way of like taking your power back
Yeah.
and owning who you are and taking intentional, deliberate time for yourself and being able to have a tool or strategy to use to help yourself feel more like you. It's like reconnecting with yourself. It's such an important thing to look inside and say, this is who I am and this is what matters to me.
Yeah. I think it's funny because a lot of people will say to me, you're an acupuncturist, you work full time at the clinic, but you also teach spin and you put a lot of time and energy into that. And I remember when I was starting to do that, you were like, is this going to be too much for you?
Yes.
And people will sort of exclaim to me, that's a lot. You're really busy. And I think about it and I'm like, you know what? This actually feels so good to me to have that balance because it's all energy directed towards this value for me of movement, exercise, and then sort of that overarching value is health.
Yep.
It's so in alignment. It doesn't even steal my energy.
Yep.
It feels energy giving and it's also a chance to be creative and it just feels really great. But I can see how if that wasn't in alignment with my values, that would burn me out in 2 seconds.
Yep. And when you put that down, when you put it down on paper and really define that and look at that, you can say, no wonder I feel great, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing things that fill me up and this is not too much. This is who I am.
Yes.
So I think it's
I
fantastic.
also remember when you kind of came to terms with one of your big values is rest, recovery, and alone time.
Yes.
All three, right?
Yes.
As like one line
thing.
item.
Yes.
And how you kind of came around to that because we talk about this all the time about our values, sort of at the end of a day or something. And I remember you just said, you know what? I'm going to be fine with this. I'm going to be fine with the fact that I just need a lot of alone time and I need a lot of recovery. I need my sleep and I just need to rest. And I was like, yeah,
it's so true.
You own that.
I think it's something that I scream at everybody all the time to like defend myself and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm like, I have to find this. I know who I am. I cannot keep going. You have to give me space. Less is more for me. I have to recover.
Right.
Yeah.
And does anyone ever give you a hard time about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? People want me to do everything under the sun. Let's go to do this. What are you doing tomorrow? When can I see you?
Yeah.
We should get together.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't. I'm working and taking care of my kids. And yes, I see people, but I need a lot of time to refuel myself. So yes, it is a constant battle and it has felt more like a dance lately than, like I'm playing hardball with the world. And it just feels really good to know who I am and to be okay with that. I'm not like other people.
Well, I think most people kind of feel like that, where they get pushback on their values.
Yeah.
And it's hard to stand in that space.
And hold it.
And own it, right? And which is a big part of defining it so that you can be really clear and say, oh my gosh, I know for certain that these are my values. I need to correlate my actions with that. And I need to stand in this space and own it and keep clear boundaries and, to feel good and feel connected to what, my sort of most authentic self needs.
Yeah, what matters to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pushback, I mean, people talk about that a lot.
They do. Yep. And, something that we'll talk about in a future podcast is surrounding yourself with people who share your core values so that life feels easier for you. And people who don't judge you and let you be yourself, right? I think that can be really supportive of your core values in terms of having people around you that understand you.
Yeah. What are some of your other core values? I'm trying to remember.
Well, one of them is the environment. I was undergrad, I was an environmental studies major along with biology major. And after college, I worked at 2 environmental nonprofits. It's something that's really important to me. It's how I was raised. It's really important to both of my parents. But when I look at my action items and behaviors around that, it's sort of gotten lost along the way. So I know
Just growing up, getting busier, having kids.
Yeah. Just, then you go to grad school, then you start a business, then you have kids, and you're just like kind of trying to survive a little bit.
Yeah.
And you don't have extra time. There aren't in between moments. And so it's something that I know I'll do more about that, and it will make me feel really like myself.
Yeah.
So I think that defining your core values is so cool because a lot of times you find gaps in your life. And I can say it's something that really matters to me and I'm going to do more about it. And I know that I will feel like a more well-rounded person if I add more in to that action and behavior of really trying to protect and help the environment.
Yeah.
What about you?
Going through this sort of exercise of defining core values, two of the ones beyond health and exercise and movement, one was having music in my life every day.
Yeah.
And that comes through with teaching fitness, but also we just have music in the house all the time.
Yeah.
And it feels really grounding for me just to have that sort of play.
Yeah.
And that creative sounds. I just love it.
Yeah. I think we're so similar in that way.
Yeah.
Yesterday, these guys all came in and the music's like blaring.
Well, every time I walk into your house,
Always.
it's blaring.
It's blaring.
And I'm super into it. It's like always a good beat.
I know. I'm like, can you guys think? Like, I think it's motivating me. I'm like, totally. That's why I have it on so loud all the time.
Yeah.
It sets the tone. It sets a mood.
Yeah. The other one that wasn't so obvious to me, but has become very clear is that I always want to be learning something every day. So I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks or researching something or watching some sort of like webinar, and friends are always teasing me, or like my wife's always teasing me. Leanne's always teasing me because it's kind of odd to be watching webinars in the middle of the day, but it's just important to me. I love to learn and I like to push myself, and I just feel like there's so much information out there about life.
Absolutely.
And I want to know it.
Yeah.
So I've realized that that's just a big part of what fills me up, is just continuing to learn, always be learning. A friend of mine who lives in New York now, she came up with that phrase, ABL, always be learning.
Oh, that's cute.
And I'm like, yes, that is like such a good motto. So I think that's great. And I think it's just so helpful for people to tap back into that.
Yeah, I agree. That's another shared core value. I mean, that's probably number 2 or 3 for me is learning and forward momentum and engaging in consuming information. It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom says, oh my gosh, when you come home from a conference, you are never happier.
Oh,
it's
conference is like a euphoric high.
Yeah, she's like, it's like you went to the moon. Like nothing makes you happier. I'm like, I know. Lifelong learner. It's so good.
Well, we have to make sure that we never step on each other's values. Very clear boundaries.
Yeah. It's probably why we get along so well, because our values are similar in the ways that matter a lot. And I'll rest and you can go teach spin.
Sounds like a deal.
Yeah.
All right.